Baltimore Ravens training camp practice turned somber on Tuesday as Isaiah Likely went down towards the end of practice with an injury and was carted off the field. We talk about the latest on Likely's injury and contract situation, as well as Lamar Jackson flexing at training camp. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this midweek edition of the show on Wednesday and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're here for you Monday through Friday with our regularly scheduled programming. We also sometimes have some bonus episodes on the weekend when we got headlines to talk about. We also go live after every single Ravens game, every single piece of Ravens big news, and we have the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, which is live Mondays and Thursdays on YouTube with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens wide receiver Kadri Ismail. And after the fact, if you missed the live, you can watch it back or listen to it back in video form or audio form. Thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Training camp continues to chug along here for the Ravens, and we have some unfortunate topics to discuss in the first part of the show, as Isaiah Likely, the biggest storyline of practice on Tuesday. He goes down with a lower leg, foot, ankle injury. He gets carted off the field. John Harbaugh gave some updates on that. And then after that whole situation happened, there were conflicting reports and rumblings and the whole 9 yards on Isaiah Likely's contract situation, which we will get into as well. We'll also dive into just general news and notes. Lamar Jackson flexed at Ravens training camp. Underrated receivers continue to do a really good job. Honestly, a lot of positives from Tuesday's training camp. The only problem was the Isaiah Likely injury. So that's going to be the story we talk about right here. Again, Likely carted off the field at the end of practice, one-on-ones. He goes down and was apparently pounding the ground in a lot of pain. John Harbaugh was asked if he had an update and said, quote, "Yes, we'll know more tomorrow. It's going to be a few weeks, though. He rolled his ankle, the foot area, so we'll get an MRI tomorrow and see exactly what needs to be done, but it'll be a few weeks. It's good that it's this early in camp." So, I mean, not necessarily the most encouraging update in terms of Likely missing time. I will say, based off what Harbaugh said, I guess it looks like it's not anything it's going to cost him the season, hopefully. You know, that's the hope. We still don't know, at least at the time of this recording. If you're watching or listening to this after we get an Isaiah Likely update, then obviously we'll know more then. But even so, if this is just a rolled ankle sprain, there are multiple different types. And actually, I wish we had Kadri Ismail here. We'll hopefully have him on tomorrow's episode of the show because he's an expert in sports movement, human movement, injuries, injury prevention, injury recovery. So I had to do my best Q impression here and try to look up some of the different types of ankle sprains and if that is the situation, just to prepare. I don't know what else it could be. Could have sprained his foot. Like, there are a lot of different things that could have happened here. So just in terms of ankle injuries, there are different timelines for recoveries. Mild ankle sprains, which are classified as grade 1, those can heal in 1 to 3 weeks generally. Now, moderate sprains, those are classified as grade 2. Those may take 3 to 6. Now, those severe grade 3 sprains, those are the worst type of scenario. They are extremely serious injuries, and those can take 3 to 6 months to heal, or potentially even longer. And you might even have to have surgery if you have a sprain like that. So just because, it wasn't a knee thing, doesn't look like an Achilles is involved, right? John Harbaugh clearly said he rolled his ankle, the foot area. If it is an ankle sprain, it is better than an ACL. It is better than a ligament injury like that. But the ankle still has ligaments that are involved, and you have to kind of be cautious with that. We saw that Travis Jones suffered an ankle injury last season, and, he never really, it took him a while to really get back from that. It was clearly hindering him even when he was back on the field. But I do agree with what John Harbaugh had to say about it happening this early in camp. right now, today is Wednesday, July 30th. Obviously, the injury happened yesterday on July 29th. There's still a month plus to go until the regular season. So even if it is, grade 2 or grade 3, and grade 3, you're looking at a crazy long recovery timeline. But if it's a grade 2, right, a moderate sprain, based off of the timelines I'm looking at right here, and maybe those who are more well versed in the medical area than I am can provide more context, whether it's on YouTube in the video comments or if you're listening in audio form on social media. But if it's that 3 to 6 week range, I'm just going to go in the middle of grade 1 and grade 3, obviously a grade 2. You still have a timeline where Likely can return before the start of the season. And the thing with Likely is he doesn't necessarily need the reps. Like, obviously it helps him. It helps everybody to have the reps, develop even more chemistry. Even vets benefit from that. But Likely doesn't need them. He can still, he can miss the rest of training camp, not play a snap in the preseason. He can just come back week 1, and I think he'd be just fine. I think he'd be A-okay if that were to be the scenario. And honestly, I would be cautious if I were the Ravens. There's no need to rush Isaiah Likely back. I honestly don't expect him. John Harbaugh already classifying in his initial update is going to be a few weeks. I'm not expecting to see him for a very long time. Obviously, no preseason. I don't think a lot of the Ravens stars will play in the preseason. That's been how they've operated. Maybe something changes this year. I don't know. But, you just kind of have to hold your breath until the results of the MRI come back, because there are also other things that could happen. Again, I mentioned maybe he sprained his foot. If it, is that ankle foot area, I've had to deal with a couple of those. And, I was in a boot for, 4 to 6 weeks, although mine, I guess, were more on the severe-ish side. But you have to have, I guess, an open mind about what this could be. Could be something where it's very minor. He misses 2 weeks and he comes back and that's good. Could be something more on the major side. But, that all we're doing right now is, I can't tell you what it is right now. Nobody can tell anybody what it is right now. We don't know. So the MRI will happen. We will get the update. If Likely is lost for any period of regular season action, it's a huge blow to the offense. Obviously, you have Mark Andrews and Charlie Kolar, so it's not like you have nothing at the position. But we know that Likely is in line to take on a huge role this season. And in a contract year, that's really big. And speaking of contract years, there were rumblings galore, I guess, on the streets of Baltimore and on the social media waves about Isaiah Likely and the Ravens being close to or have agreed upon or, this, that, and the other extension. Like, it felt like an Isaiah Likely extension was very close to coming down the pipeline, according to what multiple different people were saying. And, nothing from the Ian Rapoport or the Adam Schefters, but, it was like, well, okay, is something happening? I don't know. You're hearing all these people talk about it. All of Baltimore's talking about it. You're like, all right. And then this happens to Likely. And then Ian Rapoport goes on NFL Network after the injury and after John Harbaugh gave his updates and essentially squashed all of that and was like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing, and it's not that. He said, quote, "My understanding is things are not close, far apart. A deal is not imminent." Ian Rapoport was very clear. He said that, the sides have been talking and that isn't the communication is there. But from what he is hearing and his understanding, he does not think something is happening soon. While a bunch of other people are saying, yeah, something's going to happen soon. So very conflicting kind of trains of thought here. And I guess sources, I mean, one school is going to be right. The other school is going to be wrong. I don't know which one it's going to be. This episode is coming out at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. Maybe a deal is done by 8 a.m. on Wednesday. And of course, it probably will be with my luck. And if it is, I will clip this up right here. I will play it on the show. I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. I just don't know. I really don't. But of course, how it always goes, at least for me, is the Ravens, they like to operate on a schedule that is not convenient for me and just announce every single move when I'm not available. So I'm just going to expect that's going to happen again. But again, I have no idea what's going on with Isaiah Likely. Obviously, I think this has been sparked by the fact that Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys, he signed his contract with the Cowboys a couple of days ago. And that deal itself was, $13 million a year. So that slots him in right between Cole Kmet, who's making $12.5 million, and David Njoku, who's making $13.7. Mark Andrews is after that, the next one with $14 million. So feels like at this point, Isaiah Likely will surpass Mark Andrews, or at least tie Mark Andrews for average annual value. I'd expect Likely to want a 3 to 4 year deal. I think for Likely, he might want 3. The Ravens might want to get him locked in for 4. So again, it's really important that the Ravens get a couple of guys signed to extensions before the season. Likely would be a great option. I think Lamar Jackson's a great option for that. But obviously, I think we're all waiting and seeing the news for Isaiah Likely, hoping for the best here. But, it stinks that like stuff like this happens in training camp. Like every team goes through it. Luckily for the Ravens so far, at least until Likely went down, they didn't really have a ton of that. Jalen Davis left practice. Bilal Kone left practice. But Isaiah Likely certainly significant if he has to miss any regular season time. So hopefully that is not the case, and he just has to sit out some practice time, and we'll be good to go by the time the regular season rolls around. But of course, we'll have all the updates for you on Locked On Ravens. We'll have the latest, and we'll talk about it on the show. And if some big news does break, we will be reacting to it here on the show. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, we'll move away from Isaiah Likely. We'll get into general Ravens training camp news and notes from Tuesday, because outside of the Likely injury, there were a lot of positives to talk about, so stay tuned. We have plenty to dive into on the show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football's back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Ravens are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making it your millionth league. Now, I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years and love how smooth the draft day experience is. You have player analysis that can help you choose between 2 players if you need it. The draft boards are awesome. Everything is incredible over on Yahoo Fantasy. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. Stay tuned to get started by creating or joining Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That is yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you on this Wednesday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here. We're going to dive into more training camp updates. We talked about Isaiah Likely and the unfortunate situation, hopefully an injury that is not serious, but it is an injury nonetheless. So we have to kind of talk about it and the implications, what it could be, and the whole 9 yards. But we're moving away from that. We're now just getting into some general news and notes from training camp on Tuesday. The Ravens continuing their second day in pads. And Lamar Jackson reminded everybody about his speed. Lamar has been kind of up and down at training camp so far, according to the reports. He's had really great days. He's had other days where, at least by Lamar Jackson standards, right, by regular standards, he'd be fine. But by Lamar Jackson standards, it's kind of been like, well, maybe unspectacular. But Lamar had a play during 11-on-11s on Tuesday. He evaded rushers in the pocket. He beat multiple defenders to the sideline, turned the corner and sprinted the last 50 yards or so, rolled into the end zone. And, Malaki Starks was probably going to be able to take down Lamar in a real game, but obviously you're not going to hit the quarterback and tackle the quarterback in training camps. And John Harbaugh said as such, right? He said, you always have to run the ball every play, no matter what, especially if Lamar Jackson has the ball. But we're not going to be tackling Lamar. That's not going to be a part of the plan. So the defense was upset. They thought the play should have been whistled dead, but it was not. Lamar flipped into the end zone. He celebrated with his teammates. He actually had Jaire Alexander, who obviously is a member of the defense, come over and celebrate with the offense. So if you want to talk about vibes and like where the vibe meter is at, that thing is like the vibe meter is broken. Like it is all the way over. It's 10,000. It's not 10. It's 10,000. That's the vibe level in Baltimore right now. You got defenders celebrating with the offense after a touchdown, and we know that offense and defense, that gets competitive, especially during teamwork. So, Lamar did a little Lamar magic over the course of Tuesday with that run. Now, Nikhil Mehta, who's been covering the team over out at Owings Mills for Russell Street Report, he's done a great job. He talked about how Lamar actually looked better at practice on Tuesday, not just because of the run, but also because of the way that he was throwing the ball. He said that he was more consistent. Nikhil said Lamar was more consistent passing the football. So overall, it looked like a good day for Lamar Jackson, although the defense certainly had their fair share of plays against them. Wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, obviously. But part of the good from the offense also included Tez Walker, who has just burst onto the scene. He's been absolutely incredible. He had an awesome day for the Ravens. He was a favorite target of Lamar Jackson and other quarterbacks throughout the afternoon on Tuesday. He had a sliding catch during 11-on-11s in front of Malaki Starks, who was closing fast. He also got a Cooper Rush pass in the back of the end zone. He ended up reaching above Nate Wiggins to secure that catch. The Ravens posted highlights of him, and look, he looks good. He looks in control. He looks confident. Like Tez Walker, I think, and this is becoming less and less of a hot take by the day. Tez Walker has a real shot to take that wide receiver 3 role from DeAndre Hopkins by the time the season is over. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm not saying that, training camp's going to translate for Tez, because we've gone through this before with other receivers, James Prochet, Jaleel Scott, Jordan Lasley, Jeremy Butler, Miles Boykin. Like we've seen training camp standouts and not really translate. But we've seen Tez. We saw the flashes during the season last year. I'm a big believer in Tez. I liked him coming out of North Carolina. To me, he is someone that I think can make an impact with his skill set. He and DeAndre Hopkins actually are, they're not exactly similar, but I think they both provide a skill set that Baltimore's been missing, and that is that like bigger-ish bodied contested catch receiver. Both of them go about it in different ways, but I think it's really exciting to have players like that on the roster when for years on the show we were talking about, man, when are they going to get that guy? When are they going to get that guy? Tez Walker, to me, he has a shot to really play a big role in Baltimore this season. Now, speaking of DeAndre Hopkins, he nearly had back-to-back days of one-handed catches on Nate Wiggins, but he could not complete the catch on the sideline. DeAndre apparently, like we hear about these highlight plays from him, and he'll just have them, and it'll be out of bounds or an offensive pass interference, and Kai Drismail will argue, hey, none of that. None of it all counts. It all counts. Although he actually argued on the show last week that it did not count because it was out of bounds. So as a former receiver, I give you credit for that. But just again, feels like DeAndre is doing his job. He's going out there. He is establishing chemistry with Lamar Jackson and the other quarterbacks. Another, spectacular catch day that was not from DeAndre Hopkins. So hopefully he'll be able to get one of those inbounds as training camp continues. On the defensive side of the ball, Malaki Starks had a nice pass breakup on a Lamar Jackson pass to Mark Andrews. So shout out to Malaki. Also, speaking of safeties, Sanusi Kane and Bo Braid had huge hits on the sidelines. They're competing obviously for that number 3 safety job. So, those are 2 guys, and the Ravens to this point have not brought in another safety. So it feels like they're confident in those 2 to fill in for Darius Washington in some way, shape, or form. You also had Jaire Alexander. He did return to practice on Tuesday after missing Monday. John Harbaugh said that was expected. So not a shock he returned. He also had a pass breakup intended for Tez Walker on the sideline. So he wasted no time making his presence felt. John Hoyland, update on the kicker battle. He went 5 of 6 on field goals. His low and miss was from 51 yards on the day. Tyler Loop did not kick on the day. They have been rotating in and out on days. So that is not something to be overly concerned about. Other than that, though, Aeneas Peoples continues to flash. He has had a very good camp. He seems to be in the headlines every day for a play or two. He had a spin move sack during pass rush versus O-line. David Ojabo sighting. He won with an outside speed rush, and Broderick Washington had what would have been a sack as well. So again, Lamar Jackson looked better. He had that fun play, but the defense also had their fair share of very good moments. Other than that, Nikhil talking about how Chidobe Awuzie made 3 plays in the red zone period. He had an interception off a Patrick Ricard drop. He got pressure on the quarterback, and he also got Dayton Wade for a tackle for loss on a swing pass. And so that's, Chidobe Awuzie signed to be, a big contributor. Obviously with Jaire Alexander, it's going to be interesting to see what his role is. He'll probably be 3rd rotational corner behind Jaire Alexander and Nate Wiggins on the outside. Obviously, Marlon Humphrey's going to play a lot of slot this year. That's kind of been the goal, I think. So still going to have a role, but maybe less of one than he would have if Jaire was not. In fact, he will not have as big of a role as if Jaire was not there. If Jaire was not there, Chidobe Awuzie would be much more in the mix. But still, as a depth piece, you have to feel really, really good about that. Bo Smolka, who does a great job covering the Ravens for Press Box, he talked about how the defense is also emphasizing those takeaways. We've heard the Ravens defense talk about that. Guys like Marlon Humphrey and Zach Orr, et cetera. Sam Pitts, who is a backup tight end, he caught a pass and 3 defenders tried to get the ball free. Jay Higgins punched it out after the whistle. But even so, Higgins got a couple of helmet taps from Marlon Humphrey emphasizing, hey, that's what we want to do here. So in my opinion, the defense is prioritizing the right things. The offense is prioritizing the right things. And I think the team is honestly prioritizing the right things and has a really good mindset. Bo also talked about how Mark Andrews had another good practice. He was emphasizing ball security, and he feels like a guy that is truly rounding back into form. Not that he ever was out of form. Again, he's somebody that had a rough day against the Bills, right, in January. We know that. Sometimes he hasn't shown up in the playoffs, but he has been a consistent player for them, just has to be consistent in the postseason. But Mark, to me, is still a top 5 tight end. I've been very consistent in saying that on the show, and I truly do believe that. So, again, if Isaiah likely has to miss time, hopefully he will not, at least not regular season time. But in the event that is the case, and knock on wood again is not, Mark Andrews, we know what Mark can do. I have confidence in Mark. So, good to hear about Mark as well. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into what Chuck Smith, Mike Green, Odafe Owe had to say to the media, as well as some John Harbaugh tidbits as well, and Ravens news and notes. Stay tuned. A lot coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And I come from a golf family. I've seen a lot of ridiculous shots. And the 5-Hour Energy boost you get, it is a game changer on the course. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th. On one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Wednesday edition of the show. Again, I appreciate everybody for being here with me today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have you covered 5 days per week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, with all the daily Ravens coverage that you need. We also have bonus episodes sometimes. We go live, the whole 9 yards. We also are going to have a couple of exciting things for the season. I'm excited to kick some of that off here soon. It also is almost my 6-year anniversary on the network hosting this show. It'll be year 7 for me covering the team. I've been covering Lamar Jackson's as a starter since he began. I came on to the network in August of 2019. And, I guess I like to call myself the good luck charm that won Lamar Jackson that MVP in 2019. But all jokes aside, we have a great thing going here on Locked On Ravens, an amazing communities. We have the video community, the audio community, social media community. You can follow me on social media at Oestreicher34 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm trying to figure out TikTok. Out on there a few days ago. I have no idea how to use it, but we're trying. I might try to do some of those ranker videos and see if we can get some Ravens on there. So we'll see how that all goes. But regardless, thank you for all your support here on Locked On Ravens. This is episode 1,563 consecutively for me here. So I love the grind. I love providing daily Ravens coverage, and we are going to keep going here on Locked On Ravens. But let's dive into some more news and notes from practice on Wednesday. I want to dive into a couple of things that Chuck Smith had to say. Chuck Smith, very insightful. He's very not only calculated in his answers, but he gives, I don't want to say he gives away a lot, but he's technical and detailed. And that's not giving stuff away. It truly is giving you insight into what this Ravens team does. I've seen some people almost complain about it, where it's like, Chuck, don't give this away. I don't think he's giving anything away, right? I think in his answers, he is just so technical and so detailed. He loves football. It comes through, and I love that. I love that about Chuck Smith. Like, for example, when he talked about Mike Green. He said Mike Green is earning the stripes. Mike's a rookie, so he has to play his position, get in line like any other rookie. But, he ended up kind of talking about how he gives effort. Like, he really likes Mike Green's effort, and he is everything he was advertised to be. Fans are going to love what they see. He also talked about for Odafe Owe to create another double-digit sack season, and what ended up getting him his double-digit sack season last year. He said, creating the pass rusher mindset and the pass rusher culture, there's a way to get there. It starts with developing high-performance skill moves, and, with Odafe, he has moves, but now he's got multiple moves, Chuck Smith ended up talking about. So he said when you put a guy with those kind of skills with a guy who naturally has athleticism and strength, it can be dangerous. And so, again, Chuck Smith very high on what Odafe Owe can bring to the table. He also had a lot of high praise for Aeneas Peoples, who was known as Fub. He said, I love Fub. He's got an incredible upside. He's lightning quick. He's 293 pounds. They say he's small because he's short, but, they said he's 293 pounds. He has a high skill level. He said he's quick, great grasp of pass rusher moves. Aeneas Peoples was one of the best interior pass rushers in this class, but he was discounted because he was on the smaller side. I was ecstatic when the Ravens drafted him. I truly think he's going to be the steal of this draft class when you talk about later round selection. So I'm glad Chuck Smith seems to see that as well. And then Mike Green got to the podium and talked about for him what some of his goals were, said fulfilling his role regardless of what it is, even if it's just special teams, if it's giving good looks, being dominant on defense. So that to me is a player that truly is about the team. And you don't always get guys like that. The Ravens find ways to find guys like that, but not every team has the luxury of, a guy who was a first-round pick. We know why he fell. He fell to the second round to the Ravens. That's a guy who, with the potential he has, could just be like, yeah, I want to just play defense. I want to really hone my craft. Like, that's what I want to do. The fact that he is like saying, hey, if I have to play special teams, I have to play special teams. Like, that is the ultimate, hey, I know I'm a rookie. I know I got to earn my place, like Chuck Smith was talking about. Really good mindset. Really, really, really good mindset to have. He was asked if he had a welcome to training camp moment, and he said he didn't really have one of those, but some of his teammates, he said, were, these guys are huge. And he said that, all these guys are like, Mike Green's a big guy himself, but he talked about CJ Okoye as they said the team calls him Big CJ and he's huge. So he said that maybe seeing him, he was towering over everybody. He said maybe that's what his moment was. He also had a very interesting comment on he asked if there was a veteran that he's bonded with the most on the team, someone that he can pick his brain with and just kind of learn from. And you might think the answer in that room would be Kyle Van Noy. Obviously, he's the veteran in that room, been around the league, Super Bowl champion. Like, that's a great guy to have in your corner. He said Tavius Robinson, and he said just because of the way he goes about his day, the way that I see him work, he's out here flying around, being very destructive, and I would say he does a lot of things right. So just seeing him, he's a vet that I can look up to and I can follow behind because he does things right. Tavius Robinson to me, I think he is. I've been saying this forever. He's my pick for breakout player of the season for the Ravens. I'm super high on Tavius Robinson, both as a disruptive run defender, which we've seen, and with his growing pass rusher potential. I'm all in on Tavius Robinson. I think the team's all in on Tavius Robinson. We've heard Chuck Smith, Zach Orr, a lot of defensive coaches, and now defensive players continue to compliment Tavius Robinson. So that to me is a really important development here that I think he's going to play a really big role. Odafe Owe stepped up to the podium. He said he has a good amount of pass rushing moves in his repertoire. He is developing new pass rushing moves. And, when you go into a season, you can kind of look at matchups and say, what does this guy struggle with? And, maybe you could marry that up with stuff that you're good with in that moment. So, he's very technical, it seems like, with, what he wants to improve on and work on, which is more well-rounded so that he can be available and prepared for a lot of different matchups throughout the season. He said that, you get acclimated to the weight that he's put on. He put on about 15 to 20 pounds in the offseason, talked about how he thinks that will help him. So, it kind of is what it is with that, but I think it's going to help Owe in the long run. He also was very complimentary of Jaire Alexander. He called him a dog and said that he's talking, whether it's to himself or the opponent. He said, he brings the craziness is essentially what Odafe said about Jaire Alexander. So again, the mood at training camp turned somber after Isaiah Likely went down, but overall seemed like a very productive day of practice. And, hopefully that can continue for the Ravens here as they gear up for the preseason. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We'll be back here tomorrow with more Ravens coverage and content. So on the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and I will see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.